History often remembers the weddings. It remembers the carriage rides, the waving crowds, the gold-trimmed uniforms, and the lace veils that stretch down cathedral aisles like rivers of white silk. It remembers the happily ever after. But history is less interested in the quiet moments. It glosses over the silent breakfasts in drafty dining halls, the phone calls made in secret from the back of armored cars, and the terrifying weight of a destiny that was never asked for. This is not a fairy tale about a glass slipper. It is a story about a very real woman who fell in love with a man, only to realize that to be with him, she would have to marry an empire. It is the story of Prince Henry of Ethelgard and Clara Vance. And it begins, not in a palace, but in the misty, cobblestone quiet of a university town in Scotland, where a future king was trying very hard to be just. Harry. St. Jude's University sits on the edge of the North Sea. It is a place of grey stone and grey skies, where the wind whips off the water with enough force to knock the breath out of you. For Prince Henry, it was perfect. It was far away from the prying lenses of the capital. It was 2001. He was 19. He walked the halls in baggy jumpers and a flat cap pulled low, a bodyguard always 3 steps behind but trying to look like a mature student. He met Clara in an art history lecture. Clara was normal. That was her superpower. She came from a family of self-made merchants in the South. She was grounded, athletic, and possessed a quiet confidence that didn't demand attention. They started as friends. Just friends. They sat next to each other in the dark of the lecture hall, whispering about Renaissance brushstrokes while the professor droned on. If he says, chiaroscuro, one more time, I think I might actually fall asleep and hit my head on the desk. Don't you dare. If you faint, I'm not carrying you out. You're heavier than you look. I'm royalty. We're supposed to be carried. Not in my tutorial group, Your Highness. Here, take my notes. You missed the entire slide on Raphael. She treated him with a refreshing lack of deference. She didn't giggle. She didn't flirt. She called him out when he was being pompous and shared her toast with him when he missed breakfast. For a boy who had spent his life being handled like a porcelain doll, Clara Vance was solid earth. Every great romance has a turning point. A moment where the axis shifts. For Henry and Clara, it was the charity fashion show in their second year. Clara had volunteered to model. It was meant to be a bit of fun. She walked out onto the runway wearing a sheer, black dress. It was bold. It was daring. It was unlike the sensible girl in the wool sweaters he knew. Henry was sitting in the front row. He had paid £200 for the ticket. As she walked down the catwalk, catching the stage lights, he turned to his friend. Wow. Clara is hot. It was a teenage realization, simple and electric. But it changed everything. The friend zone evaporated in the heat of that spotlight. Later that night, at the after-party, the air between them was different. Charged. They danced, and for the first time, Henry didn't see his study partner. He saw the woman who would one day hold his life in her hands. They moved in together with 2 other friends. A farmhouse off campus. It was a golden time. A bubble. They took turns washing dishes. They argued about whose turn it was to buy milk. They were protected by an agreement between the palace and the press, hands off while he studies. But university ends. And bubbles burst. Graduation day was the first crack. But when they moved to London, the dam broke. Clara Vance became the most hunted woman in the world. Every time she left her apartment, they were there. A pack of wolves with lenses for eyes. They critiqued her clothes, her hair, her job, her background. They called her, Common Clara. They called her, Weighty Clara, mocking her for staying with a prince who wouldn't propose. Henry watched it happen, and it terrified him. He had seen this movie before. He had seen what the flashbulbs did to his mother. I can't stop them, Clara. I try to get the lawyers involved, but they're everywhere. You can't even buy a coffee without it being headline news. I can handle it, Henry. I just keep my head down. I don't read the papers. You shouldn't have to handle it. It's not fair to you. I'm dragging you into a cage. The pressure was a physical weight. Henry was beginning his military training, spending weeks away at the academy. Clara was alone in London, facing the firing squad of the tabloids every morning. The love was there. But love, contrary to the poets, is not always enough. Sometimes, survival instinct takes over. It happened in 2007. A phone call. Henry was panicked. He felt the walls closing in. He felt that by loving Clara, he was condemning her to a life of misery. He thought he was doing the noble thing that I can't promise you a normal life, Clara. I don't know if I'm ready. I don't know if we can survive this. If you're not sure, Henry, then you have your answer. They broke up. The press rejoiced. The prince is free, the headlines screamed. Clara left in the cold. Most women would have crumbled. Most would have sold their story to the highest bidder, cried on a talk show, or fled the country. Clara Vance did none of those things. She put on a brave face. She went out. She joined a rowing team. She was photographed leaving nightclubs, laughing with her sister, looking stunning and entirely unbothered. She wore bright colors. She showed Henry, and the world, that she did not need a crown to be complete. Henry, meanwhile, was miserable. He sat in his barracks, staring at the ceiling. He went to clubs and felt empty. He realized that without Clara's grounding presence, he was unmoored. He missed her laugh. He missed her honesty. He missed the only person who looked at him and saw the man, not the title. It took him 3 months to realize he had made the biggest mistake of his life. They met again at a costume party. The tension was palpable. Henry walked across the room. He didn't look like a prince. He looked like a man who was sorry. They talked for hours. They danced. And Henry realized that Clara wasn't just a girlfriend. She was his partner. She was the only one strong enough to walk this path with him. I was trying to protect you. But I realized. I can't protect myself without you. You're an idiot, Henry. But you're my idiot. They got back together. But this time, it was different. It was a partnership forged in fire. They made a pact. If they were going to do this, they would do it on their terms. 3 years later. October, 2010. Henry took Clara to a rustic log cabin in Kenya. It was a place that meant everything to him, the continent where he had come to grieve his mother, the place where he felt most free. He had carried the ring in his rucksack for 3 weeks. It was his mother's ring. A sapphire as blue as the deep ocean, surrounded by diamonds. It was a terrifying object to carry. It was a symbol of both immense love and immense tragedy. They were sitting on the veranda, watching the sun dip below the savannah, painting the sky in violet and orange. Clara. He didn't get down on one knee. They were past the theatrics. He simply leaned forward, holding the ring out. I've been waiting for the right moment. But I realized there isn't a perfect moment. There's just us. I want you by my side. For all of it. The good, the bad, the terrifying. Is that? It's my mother's. I wanted her to be here with us. Clara looked at the ring, then at Henry. She knew what saying yes meant. It meant a life of duty. It meant never really being private again. It meant the history books. But she also looked at the man who made her toast in university. The man who made her laugh until her stomach hurt. Yes. The wedding was a spectacle the world had not seen in a generation. Westminster Abbey. 2 billion people watching on television. But as Clara walked down that long, red-carpeted aisle, flanked by trees brought inside the stone cathedral. She wasn't looking at the cameras. She wasn't looking at the Queen. She was looking at Henry. He was standing at the altar, wearing his red Irish Guards tunic, looking pale and nervous. When she reached him, he leaned in. He didn't recite a royal protocol. He whispered something that the microphones barely caught. "You look beautiful." And then, breaking the tension, he cracked a joke. "Just a small family gathering, then." She laughed. And in that laugh, the world saw the truth. This wasn't just a pageant. It was a team. Years have passed since that day. The hair is a little thinner, the faces a little more lined. They have 3 children now. They have weathered scandals, family feuds, and the passing of monarchs. They are the future of the monarchy, yes. But beneath the titles, beneath the Duke and Duchess, beneath the Prince and Princess of Ethelgard, they are still the 2 students in the back of the lecture hall. Clara is the steel in Henry's spine. Henry is the softness in Clara's world. They move in sync, a glance shared across a crowded room speaking volumes that the press will never understand. They learn that the fairy tale isn't the wedding. The fairy tale is the Tuesday night 10 years later, exhausted from work, dealing with tantrums and paperwork, and still choosing, every single day, to be each other's home.